Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the WGSN-DB Going Solo Veterans Corner. Of course, I'm your host, retired Army First Sergeant Paul Holbert, and it's good to be back with you live this evening. We really appreciate those of you who watch the show and who watch the taped editions as well. It's thanks to our audience like you that helped us make a list of the top 25 podcasts here in Northern Virginia to watch. So we really appreciate that and appreciate you guys tuning into the show. As you know, there's a lot of good information and we have a lot of great guests. So before we get into tonight's guest, I want to take just a moment to recognize our sponsors. Of course, we couldn't do any of this without the sponsors, so we really appreciate them. Quest Fine Jewelers from Merrifield, Virginia. And for those of you that have watched the show, you know that I've told you before that I can speak from personal experience of Quest Fine Jewelers. If you're looking for something, whether it's from the showroom or something custom made, give them a call. Take a look at their website. Call them. Juan and Ashley Tane now. Ashley has taken over for her father, so she's now helping her uncle run the store. But if you give them a call, they'll be more than happy to help you out. I also want to thank Nationwide IT Services. NIS is a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business owned and operated by retired Army Warrant Officer C.K. Park and his crew. CK has satellite offices around the United States, as he has employees who support a number of not only federal agencies, but civilian organizations, providing everything from IT support to security to performance management. So whatever you may need for your business, his folks are there to help you. So give them a call. I also want to thank Hill and Ponton, Veterans Disability Attorneys out of Florida. Hill and Ponton is an organization that opens their doors to veterans and their families, or people that have struggled with trying to get the correct ratings and assistance from the VA and through Social Security disability. Hill and Ponton also does a lot of pro bono work, provides a lot of free webinars and a lot of free live seminars. So you need to check them out. And if you're one of those people that could actually use their services, talk to them. They will work with you. And if they do take you on and you need that kind of help, they do not collect anything from you until you go through your case and you actually win your case. So check them out. See what they can do for you if you're in need of that assistance. All right. So I want to welcome tonight's guest, of course, retired Army Sergeant Major Roy Lewis, or as they call him, Sergeant Roy. And Roy is a veteran of 36 years in the Army, and I was talking to him before the show about this, about 36 years. So he's what they would call a gray beard, even though he doesn't have the beard. But 36 years, retired as a Sergeant Major. Of course, he spent a lot of time in missions in Iraq, training new recruits as a drill instructor at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. He's also a graduate of the U.S. Army Sergeant Major's Academy in El Paso, Texas. He's also trained as a master fitness trainer and a personal life coach. So we're going to talk to him this evening and find out a little bit more, not only about his military career, but what he's doing now in the life coach arena and some of the things that he's got going on. So Sergeant Major, or Sergeant Roy, as they call you, we're glad to have you. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Paul. It's my pleasure to be here tonight.
Yeah, it's really great. And like I told you before the show, I said, my gosh, 36 years. I couldn't even imagine. I did my 21 and with an injury and stuff like that, retired. But 36 years is a long time to dedicate to your country. So I applaud you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I knew something was up when I started looking around that I'm older than the colonel. So I'm sitting there and I'm saying, wait a second, these people look pretty young. So I have to tell the colonel to go back in there and play on his Xbox. And I said, hey, sir, we got this.
I kind of do remember those days a little bit when I was an ops sergeant for a brigade in Germany. And I was just getting ready to retire. We had a new lieutenant come in, and he looked like, my gosh, the kid looked like he was still in high school. And they asked me when they introduced me if I had any questions for him, and I did. I looked at him serious could be. I said, Lieutenant, does your mama know you're over here playing Army dressed up like that? And so yeah, I know where you're talking, what you're coming from. So, but it's it's really good to have you. And so I just want to ask you, 36 years.
Mm-hmm.
How did you come to get into the military, first of all?
Well, it's a funny story. I had that asked of me this week when I'm working with some high schoolers this week, and it's funny though. I did 2 years of college. I went to school in Massachusetts, a school called Dean College, and it was a 2-year program, and that's where I met my wife. I went there and I studied actually music. I studied music and theater. And nowadays they have American Idol and all this stuff. This is before you had this. So I wanted to go to New York and put my name in lights and do all that stuff. And I wanted to, I just wanted to give it a shot, and I remember I graduated and I went to New York City and I went to all the auditions and stuff. And I remember walking downtown Broadway and I realized the light bulb came on. I said, I really don't want to do this. It's not, it's hard because anybody tell you in show business, before you make it, you are like dirt poor. You can't have a car, you can't have a girlfriend or a wife, which I had a car and I had my girlfriend. And I just didn't, not that I couldn't do it, I just didn't want to do it. Yeah. And the interesting thing about my life is that I grew up in a town called Highland Falls. Now, your listeners, any of your officers that may have been a graduate of the famous West Point Military Academy has heard of that town, Highland Falls, because that's to go through the front gate at West Point. That's where my town is. You have to go through that, through my town. So all the townspeople live there and work at West Point. So did my parents. So my identity of the military was West Point. I didn't know anything else about that. And I remember when I was 8 years old, we went to go pick my dad up from work they both worked at West Point on the campus. And my dad he worked for the landscaping team. And we were waiting for my dad. And I remember a busload of freshmen came in that day and they got off the bus. And these upperclassmen came out of nowhere and chewed these kids out. And I'm sitting there looking at this and I'm like, who the heck would sign up for this? And they were shaking in their shoes and I'm like, no way. I don't want anything to do with the military. So it was out for me. But however, I graduated college and I remember my wife, I turned to her, I said, I have no job skills. I can't do anything with this music degree. I said, let me go check out the military. Let me go check the recruiter. And next you know, I don't remember saying yes, Paul. Next you know, I'm on a bus to Fort Dix. That's all I remember. And I'm on a bus headed to Fort Dix. And I remember I was telling the students today, that is probably the most nervous point in my life. I was so nervous. My stomach was literally in knots. Because I'm thinking of like Full Metal Jacket drill sergeant. I'm thinking my life is over. I'm done. What did I sign up for? I thought I gave my life away. And it was so funny. I was telling them, I said, I thought I had ruined my life, but I did not realize I made the best decision in my life. As time went on, I realized I'm like, okay, this is not too bad. Okay. And I came to the Army in 1982. And I was they called us the old guys because in basic training, most of their trainees are 17, 18 years old. So me and a few other guys I was like 22. So I came in and I started out. I was really good with accounting. So when the recruiter said, "What do you want to do?" They said material control and accounting specialist. And I said, okay, that has the word accounting in it. I'll take it. And it was supply, just another way to say supply.
Yeah.
So I signed up for that, went to Fort Dix, did my basic training and went to graduated. And then my first assignment was in Fort Bliss, Texas, down there in Texas. And I was active duty down there for about 3 years. And then I decided to get out. And then, as you know, soldiers that get out of the military, they try to push you towards the National Guard because really believe it or not, once you're trained as a soldier, they see that as a huge asset. So they try to make you go reserve or guard or anything, which I did go National Guard for a couple of years, hated it. And I cannot remember the sergeant's name, but I was in the National Guard and he came up to me one day and he was like, "Hey, the Army Reserve is looking for drill sergeants. Are you interested?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "I'll be interested." So Paul, at that time, I spent like 5-6 years in the National Guard, and at age 39, I went to the U.S. Army Drill Sergeant School at Fort Jackson.
Oh no.
Jackson, South Carolina. Another epiphany that I had, because I'm sitting there and I remember looking at the requirements and I'm like, oh my gosh, because I was good at doing the regular military standard. That was fine. But anybody that's ever been to drill sergeant school, you have to do far above that to graduate. And I was like, and I was so scared. I hired a personal trainer. So she got me, and her name is Sherry. If she's listening, I love you. She got me through it because I could not run a lick. And my push-ups and sit-ups were okay. They were just okay. But she got me through it, got me trained up. And in year 2000, I graduated. And we started with about 167. We graduated 45. Students, and I got my hat, and I'm looking at it right here. I mean, when I got my hat, I brought it home. I took a bath with it. I didn't take it off, Paul. I didn't take it off. And my wife was like saying, "I'm taking a bath with it on." She says, "You can take your hat off now." I said, "I'm not taking it off." So that is the hardest thing that I've ever earned in my life. And when I wish I had some film to show you. When I did my first set of recruits, I was on the podium, boy. I had that hat. I was like Clint Eastwood. I tell you, I was pumped out. I had 300 trainees out there. We're doing the jumping jacks and push-ups and man, I'm just sitting out there oh man, I was pumped, and believe it or not, my career, that's probably the best job I really enjoyed. It was the hardest, but it was the best because it was like, seeing these kids get off the bus from everywhere. They were like from all over the country, different backgrounds. And then, being a veteran, when you go to boot camp, everybody's just totally tore up.
Yeah.
Everybody's tore up. And you've got 10 weeks with this platoon, you got 60 individuals. And if you got 10 weeks to come together as a team. And the transformation is phenomenal. It's and I was just sharing with these kids, the high schoolers this week. I told them, I said, they said that every time we see veterans, you guys act like you know each other, and you're different times and different ages and different background. What's up with that? Why? I said, well, it's easy. We have that one common thread. It's that rite of passage. All of us have gone through that rite of passage where we were challenged, we were scared. We didn't know anything. However, we came together as a team and we watched out for each other and we grew together. We failed together. We succeeded together. And I told them, I gave them some homework today. I said, go talk to your mother or your father or your uncle, somebody that was a vet in your family. I bet you a dime to a dollar. Ask them who their drill sergeant was, and they'll tell you who their drill sergeant was. They'll remember their mother, their father, and their drill sergeant in that order.
Well, you like I said at the beginning of the show, you spent 36 years.
Yeah.
Had a number of tours in Iraq.
Yeah.
As a drill sergeant, then finally finishing your career as a sergeant major. So it was, quite a career. But I mean, so you got to that point at 36 years. What was it like when they came to you and you finally realized that you were going to retire? You were going to have to retire, because I know you said at 36 years you stayed a year beyond what you should have, and they told you, "Hey, Roy, it's time to go, man." So what was that? What was that like after all of those years and all of those experiences, making that transition?
I have to be honest with you, and it's so funny. My other sergeant major friend, Sergeant Major Watts, I was with the 188 Infantry Brigade at Fort Stewart, the 3rd ID. and it snuck up on me, to be honest with you. I guess mentally, I thought I've known Army all my life. I've known the military all my life. So it's just something that was just that it's me. I just never thought it was going to end. And that was kind of a rough day for me because, I got brought into the command sergeant major and the battalion brigade commander. They're like, "Hey, Sergeant Major, you're coming to the end of this, and we want to send you off." And I'm like, "Send me where? Where am I going?" And they said, "You've kind of
home.
Yeah, you're going home." And I said, "What did I?" And I remember joking with them. I said, "What did I do wrong?" They said, "You didn't do anything wrong. You gotta kind of met your requirement. You've gone far beyond." And they said quite an achievement. And it still kind of catches me today because my wife, if she was on this podcast, she'll tell you I still get up at 05. I'm very habitual with my time, and you tell me to be there at 9, I'm there at 8:45. Stuff like that. My clothes, I still iron my jeans, my clothes, and it's just things that is ingrained in us as soldiers and stuff. So, and she said, and she understands that, she just and she respects that because I call my nickname for her is the commander. She's the commander, But 36 years. It was a surprise because like when in 2007, after I did the drill sergeant assignment, I got sent to Iraq in 2007, and I got promoted over there from E7 to E8. Came back to the States, did some first sergeant time, and then my last 3 years I got promoted to sergeant major, and I went to the academy in 2017. Down there, and that was very impressive. I met all the sergeant major candidates at the academy, and it's very impressive. I don't know if you've ever been to the academy, but you go to the academy, and there's this long hallway, and it's got all the pictures of all the sergeant majors, past, present, and matter of fact, my class's picture is up there. Thank goodness. But it's very impressive. I was kind of a little bit intimidated because I'm amongst all these leaders from the enlisted side of the house, and they give you a history of all these sergeant majors and stuff. And I'm just like, I felt like I almost had tears in my eyes. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm amongst the gods, all these great people. I'm part of this, but at the end of the day, I will always look back. Like I said, when I was terrified when I joined in the first place, when I started out, I thought I ruined my life. But now I look back on it, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I mean, I've met great people. I've gone on great assignments. Wouldn't trade it for a bit, And like I said, I was working with some high school students this week, and one young lady asked me, she said, "Well, what if they called you? Would you go back?" I said, "Oh, yeah. You kidding me? Yeah. No problem. I mean, I still got my uniform. I think it still fits."
See, the only question is, would they take you back at this point, right?
Yeah, I'm a little slow. I'm like you, Paul. I'm a little slow. I'm coming. But
well, you know what? It's amazing to hear the time span of your career and the things that you did. And so we're gonna take just a short break.
Okay.
And when we come back from the break, I want to talk with you about that transition and how you got into your motivational speaking and some of the things you're doing now. And we also want to talk a little bit about your book, Broken Things, as well. So for those of you in the audience, stay tuned. We'll be right back after the messages from our sponsors.
In service of our nation, you gave everything you had. You sacrificed your comfort, your peace, and sometimes even your well-being. Over 3 decades, Hill and Ponton has helped to be a guiding light for veterans seeking their rightful disability benefits. When our heroes are in need, we are not just lawyers, we're an ally, a team who understands the struggles you faced. If you're a veteran seeking the benefits you deserve, let us stand with you on this journey, because every battle deserves a hero, and no hero should fight alone.
All right, welcome back, everyone. And you've been watching the WGSN-DB Going Solo Veterans Corner with your host, retired Army First Sergeant Paul Holbert. And we've been speaking tonight with our guest, retired Army Sergeant Major Roy Lewis, or Sergeant Roy, as he likes to go by. And Roy, of course, we were just talking about his 36-year military career, and he wrapped it up because the Army finally came to him and said, Roy, you've been here too long, bud. You got to go. So it was time for Roy to make that transition. And he did. He made the transition. And I think, Roy, I'll let you share about this, but it sounds to me like you wanted to use your experiences and your positive attitude and all the things you learned from your military career to be a motivational speaker and share it with other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. After I got out, I realized I was working. Went into the work for the banks here in Charlotte. Charlotte's a big banking hub. All the big banks here, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and I basically I noticed watching their leaders, how they in the civilian world, and I couldn't help but my manager and working with people on my team and stuff, I was just saying, hey, we do this in the military, we do that. So my manager was asking me all these questions. And I said, so when I finally retired from the military, I also retired from the corporate world as well. So I decided to go on the road as a public speaker. I started a company called Sergeant Roy Intentional Leadership. And what I do is I go out and I work with corporate teams, leadership teams, faith-based, nonprofit organizations to work with their leadership teams to help them to not just teach them leadership, but to teach them intentional leadership. And I think that's the difference. Because, like, for instance, in the military, we have a real good intentional leadership model. As a first sergeant, that when you went in and you gave the commander, or you spotted a problem, or you identified a problem, you couldn't go into the commander's office and say, hey, we have a problem, and then walk out. You were held accountable as a senior leader to say, okay, here's the problem, identify it. And then you gave what we call, remember COA's course of action? Yeah. You had a course of action, and you had to give at least 3 courses of action, and to be able to help that senior leader make a decision based on your observations and stuff. So I was trying to teaching some of that to the world, to the civilian world. That's called intentional leadership. So when you make a decision, it's a well thought out decision. It has a plan. It has a direction. In the civilian world, they don't really do that, and they don't know how to do that. So I was trying to show them some of the things. And exactly, being a first sergeant, exactly. I mean, when I became first sergeant, that was the very first thing I had to learn. When I got the stripes, I'd say, yeah, sir, we got a problem, and walk out. And my commander would go, hey, where you going? Where you going? What's your recommendation on this?
Yeah.
I like, and I had to learn how to do that. Yeah. So now, when I made sergeant major, I had to address colonels and 1 and 2 star generals. So I had to go, and I learned not to be afraid of it, because senior leadership looks for that. That's what they want. And I know in the civilian world, they're looking for leaders that think out of the box. They're looking for leaders that will be able to think like that, so they can make a decision. Because people think that the people that are the big boss, they just sit around and just go, they may flippantly make decisions. They don't do that. They rely on mid-level teams to give them all of the feedback and stuff, so that they can make a decision and stuff like that. So that's what I'm doing now. And then I'm working with high school kids, to help them. I guess my love, when I was a drill sergeant, I loved seeing kids get off the bus that They didn't know where they were going. They were so lost. And at the end of a 10-week cycle, I mean, it brings drill sergeants. We don't cry. Our eyeballs sweat. We don't cry. Eyeball sweat. But see them walk across that parade field in that uniform, and their chest is out, and they're just, you can't tell them anything. They're so pumped up and motivated, and now they can take on the world. They'll come, and I can't tell you how many times, Paul, they would come up to us and say, "Drill Sergeant, thank you for not quitting on us. Thank you for not giving up on me." And I said, "Hey, you had it in you all along. We just brought it out. So that's what I'm doing now. So now that I'm retired, I think I have an obligation now is to pay it forward to the next generation, to build the next generation of leaders. And that's
let me just clarify for the audience. Is this part of that veteran engagement thing that you were talking about that you did?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's where I'm using your show. I'm glad you give me the opportunity. I hope that your vets, your listeners are listening that are veterans. You have that obligation because you have skill sets that are still needed. They're those skill sets that they invested, and I say the military invested in you. Those are skill sets that are still needed to this day. I mean, I go on teams and I can't believe some of the leadership models that are being used today. Companies are saying, "Hey, I can't get my people motivated. I don't. How do you do that? With this and that." And I'm like, "Oh, really?" I mean, when I became was E5, I was like, "What?" I learned that right out of the box. But I'm telling a lot of vets is that you are desperately needed, and it may not, resonate, relate to a job, but to have those conversations with the younger generations, maybe in your church, maybe in your civics, share that knowledge. It's not, you're not done yet. You're not done yet because I cannot tell you the times where I've heard many managers and VIPs, they say, "You military guys are so trained." I used to give an example. I was at Bank of America and they had a military support group, and they just said, "Hey, we love hiring vets because," and I said, "Why?" He said, "You guys, the way you think, the way that you guys are trained like that, you guys, when there's a problem, you take ownership of it." And I said, "Oh, really?" And I said, and I asked the person, "Do you know why?" And they would say, "Why?" I said, "Because first of all, the United States is the best trained fighting force in the world. And when I was in Iraq, I had to go train the Iraqi army. And that was weird, totally weird, because their style of leadership is more of a Soviet style of leadership where they teach leadership from the top down. That's why you saw during the Iraqi war, you take out the senior leadership, the unit is they're not effective. But you and I know, and all your vets know that are listening, that we teach leadership from the bottom up. So that means, like Paul, you're my commander. Something happens to you, I'm in charge. Something happens to me, the next person's in charge, and the next person's in charge. So there's always leadership at some point. There's always leadership. And I remember when I came to drill, I even told E1s, E2s, you got to learn how to use a radio. I said, we teach you how to use a radio, how to communicate, how to read a map, how to function, how to give a report, a salute report. We teach all that stuff. But I said, that's why the United States is the best training, best fighting force trained in the world. And that's because we have those values. Leadership is always at the forefront. You go to companies, people are like, "Well, I'm not the leader. That's just that manager's problem." No. I told people, you want to be promoted? I use a term with them called lead from the middle. You're not a manager yet, but you're in the middle. Lead from the middle. So you got people watching you from below, and you got people watching you from the top. And you just lead from the middle, and you're valuable. But I want to just say, before I lose my place, is that the vets, we have skills that the world is just, especially now with the way the economy is right now, people are not working and stuff like that. So the vets, you have to share that knowledge. It is so desperately needed.
Yeah, it's interesting because I ran into that same thing when I first retired and took my first civilian job. And, I noticed the difference between civilian organization and the military right away.
Yeah.
But I had my boss in there tell me, and she was a female boss, but she told me, she said, I've got one other veteran on my staff here. And she said, I'm so glad to have another one now, because she said, you guys always seem to be so prepared
Yeah.
and so ready to take over things when things need to be done. And she said, I wish I'd have been here when we hired a lot of these people. I'd have hired a bunch of you. So it was just kind of funny, that kind of ties in to what you're saying. And I know that
when my son made sergeant, I told him, when he made sergeant, I said, listen, I don't know. It's not in your vocabulary anymore. Go figure it out.
Yeah.
And when he became an officer, I also told him that now that you're an officer, go find that old crusty NCO and go pick him or her mind. Because I've seen it, and you've probably seen it too, Paul. These young leaders that come in, they think they're all that, just the best thing since sliced bread. Yeah. And I said, you got to go find that senior person and you pick that person's mind. Because I've heard it come out of, I've heard so many colonels and generals, they say, they say, gosh, you NCOs, how do you guys do this? You guys just like pull stuff out of nowhere. You guys are, and they call us the nickname for, especially for enlisted, we're called the backbone of the Army.
Yeah.
Because our culture is accountability, always 100% accountability. I know you've heard that when you were first sergeant, 100% accountability, and I used to teach my son, if you don't know, don't be afraid to make a mistake. But when you go in there and you talk to that senior leader, tell them, they want to know what's going on. Your boots on the ground. Explain to them what's going on. It's not about being perfect. It's about leading, and they get it, So yeah, and then especially like at the bank, when I was at the bank, my manager, he got scared because I was always giving him reports, and we had meetings and I'm always the first one there, or like I was like, I give him a status report at the end of the week. He says, you don't have to do this. I said, that's the way I'm cut.
It's a habit. Yeah.
It's a habit. He says, you're one of my, best employees because you tell me what's going on. The other ones I have to go chase after to get this stuff.
So you've come out now and you're using all the things you learn and all those skills that the military taught you. But I understand too that you've also written a book called Broken Things.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of interesting because it's, there it is. Yeah. A Christian motivational guide to handling personal brokenness. And I thought that was interesting. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, actually, it started out as a just pretty much a hobby. When I got called up in 2007, I started the book when I got deployed, and I was in Baghdad for a year. So what I did is I wrote every day, and it was kind of just something I do to keep my mind off of being homesick and nervous and all that kind of stuff. And my Christian faith, one of the things I learned when I was in a combat zone that I saw when I landed in the Middle East, even though we had the best equipment, we had the best, of everything. We had the best vehicles, everything, technology. Sadly enough, when you hear explosions and I've been shot at several times. I've been in several IED explosions. I'm okay. I got 10 fingers and 10 toes. I'm good to go. Yeah. But still, it does something to you, and people, I know people are now coming, American people are understanding that now, because I want to give kudos to all the Vietnam vets. Whenever we would go to an airport, we would fly in and out. The Vietnam vets were always there at the airport. They escorted us in. They were always there. And I asked one Vietnam vet, I said, why are you guys doing this? He says, we don't want what happened to us. We don't want happening to you guys. We want to let you know that we care. And that really spoke volumes to me, and I just like, wow, that they would care enough to see us like that. But my point I'm making is just that when you get over into a combat zone, it's a reality. Anything can happen. I did see some stuff over there. I'm not going to go into be gory about it on the broadcast, but it's a reality. However, one thing I did tell my wife is that we had an understanding. I told my wife, I said, if something happens to me, honor me. I said, dude, please do not get on the national TV stations and talk about how bad the military is. Because my wife said, well, why? I said, because that is my greatest accolade in my life, is to serve this nation. And I wear that on my chest with pride. I love that US on my chest. And I'm proud. I'm proud of those who serve, past, present, and future.
Yeah.
And I just told her, I said, hey, just you want to honor me, honor my service. So I really appreciate that, especially nowadays we're going around, you're seeing people say, thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. And I appreciate that. But to get back to what you were saying about the book, I wrote that book, bits of, kept me busy. My Christian faith was the factor that got me through all that. And in the book, I write about 3 catastrophic moments in my life where if my faith didn't pull me through, I would have lost it all. One is my daughter had a rare form of epilepsy, which she was at 16. She stopped talking at the age of 16. And the second one is while I was deployed over in Iraq, my son got arrested. He's hanging out the wrong crowd, and he got arrested. And that made me old. Both those situations, I almost lost it. And then, of course, the third incident is when I'm in Iraq, because you got to remember, when I went to Iraq, I was a drill instructor. And before that, I was a supply guy. Well, now, technically, I was a part of an 11-man special ops team. Now I'm infantry. Okay, so I'm going out there. I'm wearing the helmet, the weapons. I'm going outside the gate. And at any moment, for the first time in my military career, I had to point my weapon at a human being. I could have killed someone, and I had all those years of training. I had to be prepared to execute as a soldier. So, if it wasn't for my Christian faith to get me through, like I give you an example of what I'm talking about. We went out on patrol one afternoon, and anybody knows that's ever been in Afghanistan or Iraq, all the Humvees have a sign on the back of the Humvees where the civilians, it says, stay back 1,000 meters or you'll be shot. Yeah. Every Humvee has one. And we were in 3 vehicles, and it's kind of really our fault because they told us when we landed in Iraq, they said, the enemy is watching you. Don't take the same routes all the time. Well, we were there. First month, nothing happened. Second month, nothing happened. Third month, we were going over an overpass, and we were only half a mile from the gate to our fob. And I remember I was in the second vehicle. I was on the 50 cal, and all of a sudden, you hear this vehicle pulled up to our left side of the convoy, and everybody turned their head to look left. And all of a sudden the IED went off just like that. And I remember looking at my buddies in the lead vehicle. I saw the trunk of their Humvee fly off and go in the air. And I was like, oh my gosh. We stopped and like, oh my gosh, I said, these guys are probably dead, And then my buddy who's the medic, he was in the third vehicle. He jumps out, runs up like all medics. God bless them, what they do with medics. He runs to the front vehicle. And of course, because we're trained, everybody is like, we're not sitting around looking around. So I had to take up a position and scan the sector in the middle. My buddy had the sector in the rear, and my other buddy had the sector in the front. And thank God they suffered a flat tire. Fender was crushed from the shrapnel, but nobody was killed. Thank God. So we slapped the tow truck on the vehicle and pulled it into the fob. And that night I went back to my room and I sat there and I said, oh, I remember praying to God, like for the first time, I'm scared. And just to put it out there, I'm like, oh my gosh, I mean, I'm afraid. So I just prayed and really relied on my faith to get me through that. Cause I was like, oh my gosh, this is real. This is real. And I said, God, get me through this. But I want my guys to depend on me. I want them to know that I'm focused. They can count on me. But, you know, but long story short, you know, I got through it and my faith got me through it. And I knew it was real because, like, you know, after a while I prayed about it. God gave me peace about it. And I'm whistling, getting my truck all together and stuff. And all the guys on my team were like, Sergeant Lewis, you seem pretty relaxed. What's going on? And I didn't think anything of it. And it got to be to a point, it was a joke for a while because something would happen to us. It was always in the front of me or behind me or whatever. And they were like saying, Sergeant Lewis is a good luck charm. I would have ride in this truck. And I'm like, listen, can't everybody ride in my truck? Okay. We're going to get through this. So I ended up being the cheerleader for the team and I share that. So I use those stories to talk about how my faith got me through that. And, you know, because there's times when we are broken, you know, sometimes you can have the right equipment, you can have the resources, you can have the money, you can have all that stuff, but it's not enough. But, you know, but there is an answer for brokenness. And for me, it was my faith.
Yeah. So your book's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. But I want to, you know, so I encourage our audience to go out there and take a look at it. I was looking at one of the write-ups for it, and I thought it was pretty inspiring. So I encourage the audience to go take a look. Before we wrap up, though, well, I want to just ask you one more question. If you had one message you could share with the audience, what would it be?
That's a great question. And the one thing is, and I think it's going to always be the message for me that I think I've used for my whole entire military career, and I used it personally myself, is that you have to find out who you are, and you have to, once you find that place of who you are, it's just that, you know, you got to connect to people. You know, I don't think it's healthy for us all to be isolated. I think it's good for us to be in contact with people, because one thing I noticed now, yes, I did work in technology, but I'm noticing that, like, technology, I mean, of course, we're using it now, but technology, people are becoming isolated. And sometimes what I'll do, I'll go to a grocery store or go somewhere, a restaurant, and I'll just spark up a random conversation with someone. And I'll just say, hey, how you doing? What's going on? How's your life? And you wouldn't believe, Paul, the response that I get back from people. And people, they would just want to talk. Yeah. And making that connection, knowing that people are looking to make that connection with other people, caring for people. And I think that's what the military taught me, because, and you know, as being a vet yourself, I got guys and women that don't look like me. They don't come from my neighborhood, but they're almost like a brother and sister to me. Yeah. I would have never had those relationships had it not been for the military, to be able to, because, you know, what's our motto, especially in the military? I think it's, it's worldwide in the military: leave no fallen comrade behind, you know? So, and that's what I learned. Always stay connected. I got your back. You and I've never met in person, but we have this connection where I got your 6 and you got my 6, you know? And that's one of the things I miss about the military, because in the civilian world, they don't think like that, you know, and it's kind of sad, you know, they don't think like that. And
well, that's you know, oh, no, I'm sorry. I was going to say, no, that's a very good point. You know, talking about how, because all the vets, a lot of them that come on the show talk about that camaraderie, that being able to rely on each other, and
I miss it. I miss it. I mean, I miss it. But it's there now, because in today's vets, we have that. When I go to the VA, or I run into a vet at a restaurant or a grocery store, I was at the gym doing my little workout, and met a Navy guy, you know, we all, and then we have that thing where we pick on each other, you know, the Navy guys, I'm like, hey, you know, I don't hold that against you. And the Air Force guys are like, oh, you guys are, you don't go to the field, you go to the Holiday Inn. And they laugh. And the Navy guys pick on the Marines, and Marines pick on the Air Force. And it's so much fun, you know.
Well, Sergeant Roy, I got to tell you, man, it's been great having you on the show. I want to thank you so much for taking the time. And for those of you watching, there's his contact information at the bottom. if you'd like to talk with Sergeant Roy about doing some motivational speaking or anything like that, get in touch with him. The information's there at the bottom of the screen. And Roy, I want to thank you again for taking the time to come on the show.
Thank you, Paul. And I just want to say thank you to you and your staff. You guys keep doing what you're doing, because I've gone out to your site. I've listened to some of your episodes. You guys are doing a great job. And I've pointed other vets to your site and stuff of what you guys are doing. So I don't know if anybody's telling you. I know you guys are in the booth all the time. You don't kind of hear this stuff, but you guys are doing a phenomenal job. Keep doing what you're doing.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it. And thank you for coming on the show tonight. And for those of you out there in our audience, as you know, we usually will try to share additional information with you at the close of the show. So take a look up there. We've got an organization up here. Okay, now I'm looking at my different one. I'll save that one for the next show. That's okay. But we have VFW. Folks, I was just looking at this the other day, and they have an article, a good story up there on the VFW site, warning people about these predatory claim sharks that are getting veterans and scamming them when they're trying to file and looking for assistance with the VA. So I encourage you, take a look out there, look at the website, go to the VFW website. You'll be able to find the article. I think there's a video up there that talks about it. Just be careful. Make sure if you're getting help to do something like that, you're getting it from someone reputable, just like one of our sponsors, Hill and Ponton. They're a reputable assister of VA and their VA families. So make sure you're using someone reputable. Take a look at the information. And we want to thank you for joining us tonight on the Going Solo Veterans Corner. Veterans, again, thank you for your service, and your families, thank you for the support to those veterans. And we hope to see you on the next show.
Thank you, Paul.